Now, new plans are being drawn up by the Defence and Health Departments. Could see the Army brought in to help the NHS in the event of widespread winter strikes.
Now, it comes as the PM announces over £113 million to fund research into new technologies to be used in the NHS.
Well, ministers believe that tackling the 4 healthcare missions of cancer, obesity, mental health and addiction could save the NHS billions in the long run. Well, here to tell us his views is founder and programme director of Future Health, Richard Sloggett, who joins us in the studio now. So tell us about this plan then. So this is based on the vaccine task force that we saw during the pandemic.
Yes, good morning, Ellie. It is based on the vaccine task force. And I think the idea is you basically pick some of the sort of big areas of care. So cancer, 1 in 2 of us is going to get cancer in our lifetimes. Obesity, 2/3 of the population is overweight or obese. And in mental health, we've got rising numbers of people with mental health conditions. And the idea is you take the learnings from the vaccine task force and that model, which is very successful, obviously, rolled out the vaccine really, really quickly, found the new treatments, and then you apply it to those other areas, those big missions. And that's what the announcement this morning is all about.
Yeah, but how do you tackle these 4 key areas then? How do you go about... Because they're so different. I mean, I know certainly within cancer research for a lot of years now they're looking at gene therapy, which is very important. Obesity, though, I mean, that's... You could almost argue it's a lifestyle choice, isn't it?
So it's really interesting, you are right, these missions are not the same. So in the cancer one, you're looking at much more personalised treatments, looking at people's genetics and how they will respond to particular treatments. But if you take obesity, the obesity announcement is about introducing new treatments and new methods into the NHS to help people who have got obesity to lose weight. So these are not, each mission is not all the same.
The concern here, isn't there, is, I mean, just look at the papers this morning on the Times. We're talking about the Army to rescue strike hit NHS. Over on the Guardian over there, the price of Brexit, 4,000 fewer European doctors work in the NHS. I mean, this is a system that is already overwhelmed. It's already struggling. And there's a huge amount here to try and deliver.
Yeah, and I think this is you've got the two sides of this story playing out today. The government comes out with a positive announcement, some investment of over £100 million in trying to sort of tackle these future missions and, as you say, reduce future demand. But currently demand is overwhelming the system, and we're just about to go into a period of strike action. The nurses have said they're going to go on strike on the 15th and 20th of December. We've got paramedics potentially going out as well, physios and midwives. Yeah. So you've got this kind of future projection the government wants to give of we're investing in the future and investing in the change and better outcomes. At the same time, at the moment, the NHS is in a sort of crisis situation as we head into winter.
A lot of this is being driven by venture capitalism, though. I mean, you look at Kate Bingham, who's going to be sort of running a lot of this task force, who is a venture capitalist, right? Is that the right sort of approach to take, to have someone with that background? Is it important to be looking at the figures and the returns, if you like? I mean, not the financial returns necessarily, but the returns in terms of results, to be looking at rather than sort of healthcare?
So I think you will have healthcare people involved, but I think the idea is that you create a more dynamic model and you bring in the right people from business, academia, medical research, charities in the voluntary sector, and you create a model. And remember, the vaccine task force was sort of sat off to the side of the Whitehall response because the Whitehall response was very, very difficult during COVID. So it's a much more dynamic model.
Does that in terms of that dynamism then, does that also mean more efficient because it's driven by those sort of venture capitalist forces?
You'd hope, because you're outside the normal bureaucratic model, that you could actually drive decision-making through a lot faster. And that was the learning from the vaccines task force, that you can actually get better bang for your buck because you are less sort of burdened down by some of the processes that you would normally have to go through.
Right.
Is this a sign then, with the vaccine task force, obviously it's done so well, that we're now looking at these 4 main aims? Is this a sign, do you think, that we're heading towards a privatisation of the NHS?
So no, I don't. And I think what this is about is this is much more about a blended model. If you're going to get innovation, so Rishi Sunak went to the CBI last week and he did a big speech there, and innovation in the NHS was one of his central themes. We've got to accept that the NHS, the demand versus the supply equation isn't working. How are we going to get our demand down in the future? Well, we're going to have to bring in the right level of expertise and investment to try and change things. This is not about changing the free at the point of use care model, but it's about getting better innovations into the system to change the way care is delivered. Is
this almost like, and I know it's a bit of a rough analogy, but is this like, excuse me, Elon Musk in the space race? SpaceX versus NASA? You know, because it's it's handled in a private way, if you like. What it has produced with something like SpaceX is actually huge efficiencies, significant leaps forward in technology.
So I think this is where you get the best of the public sector and the best of the private sector together to drive changes. But we shouldn't also kill ourselves here. This is £100 million, and these are billion-pound problems. Obesity costs the NHS over £6 billion a year, cancer £5 billion, mental health £14 billion. So this is a welcome step forward to bring the scientists and the NHS together to try and fix some of these long-term problems. This is £100 million versus billions of pounds worth of problems.
Yeah. Richard, really good to talk to you this
really
morning. Thank you very much indeed.